Yeah, it's gonna be odd when we can't after 6 weeks, I remember, what's he doing? Yeah, it's like, there we go, yeah. Hang on, I'm on these. Thank you, David.
Sorry. Now. Sorry.
We're in policy in order, any two signs of which. Me too. But that's got nothing to do with it.
Flag of the United States.
Councilmember Cortez,
Here,
Councilmember Cartwright,
Here.
Councilmember Ring, Councilmember Nisley, Mayor Youngblood. Councilmember Ring. Yes. Councilmember Cortez. Okay. Councilmember Cartwright. Councilmember Nisley.
Yes.
Mayor Youngblood.
Zoom, no one's in. Okay. So we have opportunity to comment on the consent agenda, calendar. So basically, I just saw, I don't, you know, services, anybody want to pull the items, I mean, one of them. I'll think of it. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna pause for this announcement. Sorry. Okay, so you have to move to.
Well, are we, Richard, you want to give Richard the opportunity to present his engineer? It's very broad. It's.
Fine.
Okay, so now. You know, go with to totally. Yeah. It's good. So it's then calendar part. Does anybody want to pull the calendar down? So when anybody likes. Of this, I want to approve. Sorry.
Councilmember Cortez,
Aye.
Councilmember Ring,
Yes.
Councilmember Cartwright.
Aye.
Councilmember Nisley, Mayor Youngblood.
So we have a. Kind of just goes through that. So the local plan was completed back in March. We still working with the railroad to get permission to let out. Light up the signs, and we're still working on it, but the question was. The backside as it looks there. The orientational sign is that it's really more obvious as you look. The Eagle fence here at Follow appears to be more of the end of the audience then for the backside is people do. So, the next, there was some original artwork proposed back in the welcome sign. This is where it was, and from I wasn't even with it this time, but it was called. This was it's neat, but it's kind of busy and it doesn't really work. If the goal is to provide some type of actionable direction, which we should discover Loomis again. There's things and Loomis discovers, and it was thought that it compete with something this new. But on the backside, that means what the more of a map product designed into the white space. So that's one idea. Is if there's a desire to put a partner, you can kind of on the original. Not precise, but next thing. Yeah. The anchor itself.
I'm gonna escape out of this.
How long is it there?
Yes.
Sorry.
It worked outside, right?
I think it will.
Do you want to go and try it again?
Meryl, maybe try talking into that.
Well, YouTube doesn't have sounds. Oh yeah, no, no.
Miguel and Ian, we heard.
They'd have to hear it. Ever try Zoom?
Maybe.
They might try viewing it through Zoom. Good try. Meryl, go ahead and speak again. Try it and ask if they can ask Bonnie if she can hear.
Can you hear me now?
A little closer. No, there's no. Miguel raised his hand. So we can hear. So yeah, everyone can hear, so.
Okay, so thank you. Back inside and then what is this? So some of the thoughts were. Thanks for visiting Loomis. Taylor is kind of this town that is more close to the field. Or that type of message, but it's definitely one out of front. And it's the backside. Of the enjoy Loomis, discover Loomis.
It's not really welcome.
Next one. There's also the choices. Use a logo in addition to them. So this is kind of a rendering of like the slats. You'd probably have it. Lends itself for the logo. Next up. Is it?
That's it.
So, and really, there's other ideas, maybe. Signs probably to get that sign, artwork. Close to $2,000, probably $250. One thought was you promote, you're doing the front side of the thing, you can promote on the back side of the thing. There's no reason you couldn't do artwork. But it's just kind of a discussion to plot down.
I have a few comments. I appreciate that and brought back the original art, but I don't think that fits. That was on art to do that, but I don't think it fits. And I also think that it's really design. Wayside are tools to help define the downtown street. People like that or paying for special place. And since a lot of people live outside our downtown, they bypass our center of town, signed on to let people know. Signs were needed to let people know that the historical commercial district existing just blocks away. These signs are typically larger style sign surrounded by a and they should be a simple design, few words possible. And I say that as Stephen and I know there's a lot of discussion of the past and all of this thing and not. But I would love to see a volunteer or some sort of somebody. That's the bottom of it. I don't think that is something we originally talked about this. There was some planters and some blocks and said no, you didn't like to have it. So I don't see why they can't have more or some sort of something out there. It just looks like it's open out there by itself. And I just wanted to say that before we go on to the conversation. I'll keep my thoughts on what should happen for that after you hear the comments. But I wanted to put that out there.
Just to piggyback on what Jane was saying, there is an organization website just to where football service and we can contact that, and we do that in our public works. So we have to. We live and move with an abundance of things. So people have the combination of where it's spending because it's still very, that water to be arranged in that attractive way from, right? You're not having to bring in drip irrigation to support. But it's still been attractive, it's easy to maintain because water is, it's not there. It's brought. This is.
I have a question. Um, did you want to go or it's something? Prior, like the building of the city, I thought we couldn't have volunteers because it was UP property. Is that changed for like the purpose of the decorating? I have no idea.
So the sign is around. The plans. Wasn't. The original plan said solar panels. Which had. Pretty fine, there's. Insurance, railroad insurance, it's pretty expensive to get it. For the contractor to build this. I'll check whether the lease agreement allows for landscaping. But I know of, the boxes. Not the fruit boxes, right then. Go for it, so. But we can, we've talked very much. Yeah, part of the ground covering.
I guess my question really is about the volunteer, like, because I know it's building the science, because it's property had to be, like a certain license or in be on whatever, you know, that, is not the same.
Yeah, you know, it might be a process. Skin.
Right.
So, okay, text them, we get crazy, but we can look at it.
If we had a volunteer painter,
Yeah.
it's going to be an issue. Unless they painted it on something else and we had. Trying to follow.
Yeah. Period, then I can volunteer. The contractor, some. The construction, sign. Signing what guy was a sub. Name. Actually volunteers. Awkward because it is.
So, if, like he said, that they. Actually put this. You're showing this picture here, where we have the different areas where. Or whatever. After, so technically, they haven't actually physically solved. In the areas and documents.
Yeah, I think. Probably taking the volunteer as his staff. Cover the. And I think if we were gonna put up artwork, potentially it'd be a digital print. That would just like wall, it's put up against the slats and just do that. So it doesn't necessarily involve them. Here's the art. It's what it is.
I do have a comment, it's that, but I was waiting to hear what you think was going to comment before I. Well, I'm sorry, I don't think that, they need to be, I would like to see them, seasonal. Or, you know, like we do downtown, that, I'm not opposed to having it be a community kind of thing if they wanted to put input on it, but I don't think the messaging shouldn't be invented, it needs to be stock local or bring whatever, all of our banners say now and call it, I think it needs to match, and that's just my comment. And I do agree that it is a banned town, so I'm just thinking these will be a nice positive message that we're just this better.
Yeah, I actually don't, I would prefer it not as a game. I think if it was a picture. So the picture that was there was slide about those kind of rooms. I think it's fine, and if you move it there, it doesn't change it. Usually, I think that's about, I'm fine with that, if it's a cheap option, I think that's great too. And if. That's also, I'm okay, and if we use that, I don't want. In our packet kind of said. Put out the community, had to go with them. If you were paying, we said. But I think if it was just a volunteer. Spend something in, I think it would be. It seems like if we don't like it.
That is one of the questions, so if we're gonna go. Let me sort of, go. One idea is you have some. Yeah, if people could submit things and they post it on the website or they do. Then you can vote.
It'd be super cool if we could get a student, but if you had. For a couple months it was 10, and a couple months it was greater, for a couple months they're lower, so that would be. And the kids, if you drive by and you see your artwork and you're 12 to 15, 18 years old, it'd be that awesome. I think
And the beta is cheap, that's it. That type of, the backdrop, some one. It's one property that
right.
is a little more special.
We did not install, so maybe, and some of those statements to be. Do that was included, and so we're not taking the additional funds to the sign. With this reason, that the found.
I think man's best. Recycle is bad. That is really operating.
If I may, all wonderful comments, but I think the first step is to figure out that law. Find competition or anything else.
Do you want to open up for public comment? And just see, I see Miguel. Go ahead, Miguel.
Yeah, my comment is you're really breaking up. Can't really understand what people are saying again. So hopefully get some sound engineer to come in and fix the system because I can't really understand what anybody's saying. So that's my comment. Thank you.
So clear. Before that.
Okay, and Pam. Okay, go ahead, Pam.
Unmute.
You're good.
Hi, I'm having trouble of hearing all of you. I have no idea what Merrill is talking about. I have no idea what's going on. I get so I'm going to say that right off the bat. I have no idea what he's talking about, what everybody else is talking about, just like what Miguel says. You guys are all cutting in and out. But this is what I wanted to say before you got to the agenda, that I think this is the pits having this special meeting on a Friday. Has there ever been a special meeting on a Friday? I know you legally got the email out on Wednesday afternoon, but this limits a lot of people of attending. And I personally would rather be in my pool on this hot day. And at the last town council meeting, when Recology was there doing a presentation, multiple people got up and spoke. Deborah spoke about the senior rate. I've never seen her at a town council meeting. Jean spoke about the rate, that it should be like low income because it's misleading at a senior rate. It's based on income. Alina got, Alina,
We're talking about the sign part, so we're past this.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I
So
thought
he
this,
is fine at
I thought
Sierra
this
College.
was, I thought this was my 3 minutes that I get to talk at the beginning of the meeting. So what is Meryl talking about?
He's addressing his finding Taylor Sierra College, the Loomis, the most the road. We're talking.
I, I, I can't hear what you're saying. Something Sierra College. What report is Meryl doing?
We're on the agenda, which is about the discovery in this time. That's at the corner of Tierra College and the
David, I hear something, but I can't hear what you're saying. Have you already gone to the agenda part on? Have you already gone to the agenda part?
So Pam, can you hear me? Pam, this is Carol. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you, Carol.
Okay, so Pam, we've already gone through the first part of the meeting. We did the public comment on items not on the agenda.
Oh,
Right
I
now,
didn't hear
okay.
that. I did not
Okay.
hear that. I have a comment. You guys are cutting in and out. I had no idea. I've been on since 6 o'clock.
Because of, okay,
I'm in my bathing suit.
so Pam, do you want to have your 3 minutes to talk?
Well, yeah, that's what I thought I was doing. I didn't even know you passed the agenda and got past the public
Yeah,
comment.
we've already done that part. So if you would like to continue on with your 3 minutes on items not on the agenda, go ahead and finish what you were saying and restart your time.
Okay, I heard something about I could get my 3 minutes in.
Yes, go ahead and give me your 3 minutes.
Okay, I guess I'll start over about, I think it's the Pitts having this on a Friday. Has there ever been a special meeting on a Friday? I know the email legally came out on Wednesday, but this limits a lot of people of attending. And I was saying at the last council meeting on June 11th, Recology did a presentation and multiple people got up and spoke. Deborah, Jean Wilson, Alina, there was people on Zoom. I got up there and I talked about the troubles I was having with the vacation holds. Uh, Alina got up there and said she's had unlimited service for years. She puts out an extra crayon and she gets a bill in the mail. And she's been paying for unlimited service for years. Now, um, Stephanie, I know you said after and there was people on Zoom that had questions too. And I know, Stephanie, you said that after all the people spoke, that they would come and answer those questions. And that didn't happen. And I briefly talked to Jenny about this yesterday, but I ran after Tony to get his business card, but I came back in because there was other things on the agenda that, I wanted, to follow. So I'm just asking for in the future, when you have people doing, presentations and you have people actually coming and attending in person or asking questions on Zoom, to please in the future, you know, have any presentators, come back up and answer the questions that were brought by the public. I would like, yeah, I followed him out, but it's not on the record. People should be able to get up there and it be on the record and answer all those questions. I mean, we make the effort, to be there at these poorly attended meetings. I would like to see them on record addressing all the questions. So that's it. But now you're saying Meryl's talking about something on the agenda that I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Thank you, Pam.
Jeff, could you address, the question about why we think people will go back and forth here and clear, and then they public has 5 sheets.
What you're talking about, are you talking about last week's meeting? So,
Sorry, but, the questions that were being presented were not pertaining to the item. It was, a public hearing for the rate increase. That's why having the residents reach out to your folks again. And I can reach out to you to make sure you got your questions answered. If somebody's staff that work.
It's just something.
There is one of those microphones, the actual system, something plugged in, the vision. Look at. Okay, you have it, Marie?
Yeah, we tested it.
Okay. And you can hear all the rest.
You
yes.
just have to talk right into that microphone, make sure you're enunciating.
Yes, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so we're good. So do we want to go ahead and just continue on with the meeting? Okay, thank you. Just. I'm gonna take all that.
So. I'm sorry, earlier I said maybe. Quickly over there. We'll come back to the audience. Yeah, way. Just a couple comments. First of all, it is odd to have a meeting. It does really. Never talking. Super important. All you guys, right? It's a lot of talking. So I would just hope that maybe they give us some things for the public more time to let them know they'd like to see it back. That's so it's fun. And just one of those other areas that they have. What we can do. Jan. Yes, sounds. Harold?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, we'll do that, but I guess just in general, we have to come down to the.
I was gonna say, I think that the general. At least first see if we can have them volunteers or what, you know,
Obviously, but I do think we need to do something next to the sign, maybe we, if we could, or if I can't go out and do it. But you have other work to do. It just looks a little chatty. Thank you.
And any comment, I think in the interest of everybody make the sign, they want to have a lot of feelings, and because we're on Friday, the good point, I think we should probably go over this to a time as a council meeting where people can actually.
Yeah, I mean, the staff has plenty of homework to do before it's ready to come back and get in tonight. And this is the project that Merrill was working on. He didn't want to leave it for Richard to follow up on at the next meeting. So it'll be a future agenda item once we learn whether.
So I'm gonna interrupt a second. So our direction to staff is just to gather more information and bring it back at a later date. Okay, thank you.
So item 5 is regarding
Since they can hear you, like,
Sure.
This maybe is that. You want me to present them over here? Oh, maybe it's just more.
Yeah.
Okay, I will talk loud, hopefully the audience can hear me. This presentation is on the 2024-2025 budget. And also for the 2024-25 annual appropriation limit. We have a PowerPoint. I like data. Pocket everything on this, and we'll try to get complete. Quite a few slides. That's the last one.
Bye.
Get to see the whole thing in reverse. That's great. Okay, and we can actually go to the next slide. So. There we go. Okay, so these are the topics that we're going to touch briefly on today. First, we're going to take a big picture look at the types of funds and what you actually see in the entire book. Then we're going to dive into the general fund budget, expenditures there. We're going to look at the general fund reserves, touch briefly on other funds, and then we'll talk about it. Okay. And so before I jump into what is in the book, I definitely touch base on what is not in the book. I want to mention that I know that there are faults in the format and the layout of this document. I did my best to update it to the best of my ability for this year, but there are definitely improvements that we'll make next year, specifically in account code structure, descriptions, delineation, so that we can really see what's in each budget line item, and then also getting continuity, I guess, across all of the departments. I noticed a lot of the same type of expenditures were hitting different account names in different departments. So we will be working on cleaning that up before you see this document again, and working on that, but that's what's not in the document. So we'll talk about what is in the document. So next slide here. Okay, so these are the types of funds that are in our budget document, and you have our general fund, and this is a simplified list, but we have 7 development impact fee funds that are reflected in here. We have 16 maintenance district funds, streets, roads, and transportation funds have very similar purposes. They're condensed one page on this in this document altogether, but there are multiple funds. We have our tree fund, our supplemental law enforcement fund, and our solid waste fund. And next slide. I've done an oversimplified view of how those funds are used. So you can see with these arrows, and I copied Merrill with the colors of money. You guys got that last time. So these different funds have different purposes. General fund contributes to our general operations. And it also contributes to capital outlay through the contributions to our capital reserve, capital improvement reserve. Development impact fees are 100% for capital outlay. They have intended purposes that we use those funds for. Our maintenance district funds are primarily for capital outlay and projects. Goes into the maintenance district area. They contribute to a street overlay or whatever we're doing in that area. We also have a few other things that get that and we'll fetch that. Street, roads, and transportation funds also contribute to capital outlay projects. They contribute to the street and road maintenance in our account and our transit contract. The tree fund is used for tree canopy mitigation, and supplemental law enforcement fund is for law enforcement, and our solid waste fund. Multiple activities related to landfill diversions, and waste reduction. So that's a big picture look at what's all in this book. We're going to focus mostly on the general fund tonight, operating budget. But one more thing, if you want to go to the next slide that I want to touch base on. I have been here 3 months and I can't tell you how many times I've already heard how much money does the town have. This is a question that I want to address. And there's really 2 places that you need to look to answer that question. There's what do we have budgeted to spend this year? And what do we not have budgeted to spend this year? So the budget answers the first part of the question. And the second part of that question is answered by looking at fund balances. So these are the fund balances that we have after we budgeting to spend. And you can see that these fund balances are here, but they are all for restricted purposes. So we'll talk further slide about the general fund. That balance is held in reserves. We'll address that. And then all of the other fund balances have very restricted purposes. So the reasons that those revenues are collected and can be used. So the amount of money that the town has is a combination of what we're budgeting to spend in this budget, balance of budgets or money that we're not spending. For this slide, I actually intentionally broke out the park development budget. It actually all is in one fund, but I wanted to show those as separate fund balances, even though they're not technically funds, to show that those are reserved for 3 different reasons. And that question comes up a lot with development. And then in the budget, there are actually 2 reserve line items, space and park acquisition. Those were fees that were collected in 2020 that we are reserving for those purposes, and they do hold a separate intended fund balance. You can see 2 of the high mark lines here on these bars. The Horseshoe Bar interchange has a large fund balance, and you know what we're saving that up for. And the maintenance districts, that's a combined total of all 16. Too big. So that's where the money lies. And when you see our treasurer's report that comes quarterly, this is what you're seeing. These are the funds that are invested. There's not other funds. These funds and that we're not using immediately, that are invested. And so we invest on behalf of all of these purposes and distribute those to the earnings. Okay, next slide. So we'll jump into the general fund. The general fund balance budget, we have a balanced budget. If you look at the numbers, we have $6.636 million estimated for revenues this year and $6.606 for expenditures. Looks like a very close gap, but I wanted to point out that one of the expenditures in this year's budget are expenditures. We'll focus on that a little bit in the future slide, but really the red to red is we're comparing for ongoing versus revenues. We did take a very conservative approach in anticipating revenues. We do things this year, and so we estimates informing that projection, but we did go on the conservative side until we see the revenues actually. Next slide, please. Okay, so I love price. I was going to say that. So this is a listing of all of our revenue sources and for this year. And I think one of the important things here, the pie chart visually represents the different revenue sources and how heavily they weigh into our revenue. The 2 blue sections here in this pie chart are actually both sales tax, but I split them out to really demonstrate how much of an impact the 4% sales tax has on revenue. The light blue section of this chart is our percent that we receive as revenues for our base 7.25% sales tax. And you can see that just that extra 4% tax, 100% of that revenue comes to the town. So it really has an impact. Services that we're able to provide, receive things like the library, safety, contracts, all of the great benefits that we're able to provide to the town. That's a huge contributing factor that is 100% to our county services. And it's only just less than half of all the other sales tax that we receive. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a look at the 5-year trends for our major revenue sources. So this chart takes those 6 categories of major revenue sources and it shows how those have been trending over the last 5 years. The first category is property tax revenues. Those revenues are trend very closely with our assessed value of property in town. We have estimated a 5.75% increase based on information from the county's assessor's office for next year. And that's been the trajectory of that revenue source for the last 5 years. Sales and use tax, and I again broke out the 4% tax, but they're very similar, point out the obvious, and the green chart, the green bar, both those categories, we have new revenue. And so that is reflected in this base estimates from our professional sales tax consultants. But I wanted to point out the history of our sales and use tax, because not all of that change is related to new revenues. We have, if you look at what's been happening over the last 4 years, sales tax has had, it's a little bit of a fluctuation. And so just to discuss why it's happening, there are a couple of contributing. So we've had slowing economy, cooling economy, we've had inflation, we've had through the pandemic, we actually had spending patterns that early in the pandemic, people had savings and they had money and they were making purchase choices such as buying, having big projects in their house or buying expensive things with their money. They didn't know what else to do with it. So, but then later in the pandemic, they ran out of money. And so over the last 18 months, we are seeing that people are making more choices toward value retail shopping. People are spending more at Walmart than they are on jewelry these days. So that is also a contributing factor as those moves low. But the biggest thing that affected our sales tax, if the green bar did not increase with new retail, what you would have seen is a slight dip. Recovering from the dip. It's projected, and I think it was actually discussed in the presentation years ago. I watched that. So we knew it was coming, and we knew we were recovering. It is basically corporate and sales tax restructuring. 15 years ago, there was a concern that that would take sales tax. Cities, all. So there was a lot of focus on making sure that that the laws were in place, that we were reflecting sales. That all went into place great, and we didn't see much of effect after we recovered from that switch. But in 2020, specifically Amazon, the corporate structure changes, and what they started to do was create films. And so now somebody in Loomis purchasing something from Amazon, the sales tax on that purchase is still somewhere that was still in Sacramento. The sales tax revenue for that purchase goes to the location of the fulfillment as if it's a retail store. And so no longer it's the loans, even if somebody in those made that purchase. And so that really hurt revenues for all of Pasco County and any county that doesn't have fulfillment. And we were just starting to see recovery on that. So the projections before new retail showed we were just coming out. Franchise fees, these are fees collected from PG&E, the quality, cable television, for their money to provide services in the town of Loomis and have their infrastructure here. It's a little bit of a more flat incline because cable television is on a multi-year downturn on that fees, but PG&E and ecology are CPI and CIPI switch those up a lot. I talked about both of them. License and permit fees. This one looks like there's a big difference. Really, this funding source has a revenue to expense relationship, but it doesn't really make a big difference on your general fund the way that you budget it. So when we have a spike year, so we have atypical development. Permit fees collected, but we also have the related expenses to deliver on those. And so what we've done is we've budgeted for a typical year, but if we do have more revenues, we will have the expenses related to that. Permit fees are not intended to be a revenue generator; they're supposed to be, that the expense. So you're saying an estimate that's closer to the 21 and 22 years, but it goes expenses of this. And then other agency is the primary, so there is vehicle, the property tax and the vehicle licensing fees. This is something that changed back in 2004. The town used to receive revenues directly from the motor vehicles. That changed, and the state decided that we should not be punished for not having that be the fee structure anymore, and so they backfill that fee and give us revenues through additional property tax contributions. And so we get that instead of the vehicle license fees directly from the DMV. So that trend is very similarly to property tax. Okay, next slide, please. Let's talk about expenditures. So here's a listing of expenditures by department or cost center, general operating budget. This list is great for our internal management of our departmental budgets, but it doesn't do the best job of explaining what's in the budget. So it's there, the data is there, but let's go to the next slide, and we're going to talk about the types of expenditures. I think this is more transparent about what we're doing. So we have 33% of our operating budget allocated to safety services, 31% to personnel, 9.5% to professional services, 17.7% on other ongoing expenses, and 8.8% of the budget is for one-time expenses. So each of these categories. Okay, safety services. So there's not much in this category, but it's primarily our contract with the Buster County Sheriff's Office and our contract for animal control. Those have seen increases this year. I know we just have received the transmittal letter that talks about percentage increases for comments like this. We have a budget line item for wildland fire. They're not active contract related to that. It's budgeted and we have expenditures related to wildland fire, but it doesn't pretty much a flat line budget that's been different. Next slide. Personnel. So we have our list of positions here. We have our elected positions, our commission positions for the planning commission, and then we have 18 staff for the town. It's listed here. I won't read them all, but I'm going to focus on what's new this year. So this year we are proposing one additional library assistant. We have the permit technician position that the job description approved last week. And that is replacing the administrative clerk position. So that's just a change in position rather than an addition to additional position. We have Measure A that passed this year. And so this affects what you're seeing, all of these 6-month notations on the clerk position. So mid-year, we have the elected town clerk position go away. The deputy town clerk position also retires, and then we will have a new town clerk position appointed at South position here. The operations manager position. This again, operations manager and lead worker position in public works. Those are existing positions. We just fill them as needed. So it's not a new job description. But this year we're proposing that the operations manager position is filled and that the lead worker position is left vacant. And then we've also budgeted for some additional hours for help in the public works department. This 990-hour maximum. This is a way that we get help with minimal costs. This keeps us out of making the position permanent and benefited, and it keeps them out of CalPERS, and that's a big expense for the position. So 990 hours is our threshold that we away from all of those types of expenses. And then we have a cost of living adjustment of 7%, and that is related to the consumer price index that we use historically with the district, and it is also available. Professional services. So these contract services that we have, they're not every single contract we have. We have additional contracts for landscaping and janitorial, but these are our professional services. And they're listed here: legal services, code enforcement, building inspector, IT, our annual audit, and engineering consultants. So this makes up 9.5% of the budget. There are not new contracts this year, but we did have a change in the IT contract. We upgraded that contract to add additional service and protection against cyber security. So, or threats. So we know we've been experiencing these, we're being proactive and putting some additional protections in place. But pretty much other than that, inflationary adjustments for these contracts, nothing out of the ordinary that's not following normal inflation rates. Okay, next one. Okay, and then we have 17.7% allocated to other ongoing expenses. this is basically the catch-all for everything else that we do in town. A lot of business activity, people noticing, I won't read them all, but materials, supplies for the library and parks and for drainage systems, landscaping, janitorial, things of that nature. Our utilities fall here, our insurance costs fall here, everything else that is ongoing. New this year, I listed most of them, but I noticed I missed a couple, so hopefully I'll catch you. Inflationary increases for existing contracts. Utilities and insurance have seen increase higher than everything else. We actually have seen a 30% increase from what we budgeted last year for utilities for what we're seeing for next year. So that has been a huge increase that we've had to adjust for. And I'll say on this topic that when we see changes like that, and we're analyzing what we're going to put into the budget, we have to make decisions on, is this a cost that we have to budget for? Or are we going to budget a flat number and just get bang? And, you know, sometimes things like conferences and office supplies, we might just keep the budget flat and just accept the fact that we're just gonna get less for it, because we have to increase the budget for, we can keep the lights off and conserve water, but we're not gonna have a huge increase. We don't have control over. And insurance is another one that's done it more than a lot of the other costs. We have increased the budget for economic development this year. We haven't identified specific expenses, but that will be directed through the Economic Development Committee. Another thing that's not listed here is we did increase the budget for workshops and conferences for the town council. There's a lot of interest in attending those things, and so that increase is in the budget. And then another item is the annual tree canopy maintenance. So this has been a topic in prior years where a lot of years we just went without and we weren't able to maintain our tree canopy. And then a couple of years it was charged to the tree fund. That wasn't the best method of the intended use of those revenues. And so now we are able to plug that in as an annual expense in our operating budget. We have increased budget for park maintenance materials. We've been investing a lot in getting our parks updated, so we want to keep them updated. We have some stuff with the park that we want to maintain over the years in those that. And then we have increased budget for our community sandbag program so that we can sand supplies and bags for community if needed. This next note, it says legal noticing budget move from Penn administration. This is actually a reminder for me to talk about a few things that moved in it. So if you're looking at the budget, we might see some things went away or some things look like they've had a big increase. Not all of those are really budget changes. They are just, we budgeted them in a more appropriate place. Legal noticing really doesn't capture, it used to be in the town council budget and it's not part of having a town council, but it's more of an administrative function. So we moved that to administration. We've done that also with our insurance costs. $150,000 in property and liability insurance annually. However, was historically had about 5,000 of that coded to the library, and that wasn't really with the correct appropriation of that expense. And so we reallocated some things or moved some things, but it wasn't really a budget change. It was just a coding change, and so just wanted to point that out. And then the refuse franchise fee comes there. This one, so historically, this fee has gone to the general fund, but discussion with the town manager, it looks like there may be the intention of requirement and definitely right now intent to align those revenues to the intended purpose of dealing with solid waste. So starting this year, we are recommending that those revenues be transferred to our solid waste fund and used for the intended purpose of things. Pretty much it for ongoing expenses, and then let's talk next slide about our one-time expenses. So this is 8.8% of the budget this year. It's has identified the actual expense for each one of these items and the transmittal letter. But you can see we have a lot a lot happening. In planning, we have, the completion of our general plan contracts. We have, I'll focus on the biggest ones here, zoning updates that we know to do this year. And just to back up a little bit, one-time expenses might be one big purchase, it might be something that occurs this year. It might even span a year or two. These are things that we know that we need to do, but they're not going to be forever. So we have a consultant for the Parks and Open Space Committee that we want to put together. We have an organizational review occurring through the administration department. We have an extra audit occurring in this budget because last year's budget audit didn't occur in the fiscal year. It's going to occur twice next fiscal year. So that's one time for that year for that increased cost. We have a new financial software that we need to roll out in the finance department. This is, I can speak to this personally. This one's very critical. We don't have the capacity to budget or to track contracts in the financial software. So doing that manually really, there's a lot of room for error and those other ones aren't that great, but the $584,000. So what I want to point out here is that next year's budget, if this budget's approved in this manner, there's decisions to be made with this. We anticipate having a very similar source of revenue and expenditures to ongoings. But what do you want to do with these revenues in future years? Do you want to assign new one-time expenditures that are your priority that next year, or you want to increase ongoing costs? There's something that you want to address there, or do you want to funnel all those revenues into and probably it would be a combination of all three of those. We'll see what happens next year, but that's really in this budget this year. Let's talk general fund reserves. So these are the reserves anticipated at the end of next fiscal year. June 2025, assuming this budget is adopted and goes as planned. So most of these reserves have not changed since we saw a presentation on the last. I lumped a couple of them together just to kind of keep it concise, but basically reserves are set up for one of two reasons: for emergency or bad situation, or to save up for something that you know that you're going to expense for in the future. And so our operating reserves we've kept in place for quite a while. These are for emergencies or major economic impacts, where the council needs to come up with a plan of how we're going to mitigate that and have some buffer to deal with something like that. Other post-employment benefits, this is saving for future expenses. These are for retirement benefits, and we've got 60 to 70% of that expense in this reserve. We may have more expenses in the future. Right now, we do pay as you go. We pay the post-employment benefits that are due each year, but this gives us a buffer if everybody retires and needs post-employment benefits in the same year. We have this reserve to protect us from that. Drainage, fire, supplemental law enforcement, litigation, and business assistance. These resources are all related to emergencies or something occurring that was unexpected. Parks and capital improvement resources, these are for future expenses. So the parks reserve, this is an addition to our parks fund. That is a development impact fee. But the capital improvements reserve, you'll see that is anticipated to be at $91,000 in the fiscal year. And this is 2 years ago, this reserve was about $2 million. The adoption through the program in 22-23, stand through 23-24, and with the adoption of the most current CIP last week, all of those expenditures are accounted for in this new balance. So historically, this balance stayed as a reserve until dollars were spent, but that creates confusion internally. How much money do we have to appropriate to the next? And so now what I'm reflecting here is this is the balance after all of the appropriations that the council has made. If you want to change your mind and put something back and cancel the project, it would increase this. But this is really to show you truly what is left to appropriate. Or to, if we have a budget or a bid date number coming higher. This is how much we have to play with in this fiscal year. Now, again, the CIP that was adopted last week, that was a 2-year program. So there will be more revenues that go into this reserve next year that aren't reflected yet. But all of the expenses are anticipated expenses are taken out. So it's kind of a mismatch having a 2-year CIP and a 1-year budget. So this is the best I could do with a 1-year budget to reflect. Okay. Other funds. So other funds, again, the colors of money here. What you see in the budget document for the tree fund, we have the 2 programs, Adopt an Oak Tree. We have the Oak Tree pruning program. We had a presentation on those. Those are budgeted for this year. Supplemental law enforcement fund, we receive money, revenues for frontline law enforcement, and use that to fund a portion of our Pasco County Sheriff's contract for the traffic control officer specifically. The solid waste fund, we do lots of activities related to these revenues. We have cleanup days, litter removal, recycling. We have our edible food program with the county where foods are taken that are about to expire from the grocery stores and distributed. We have our organic compost giveaway, biomass and electricity credit purchases to purchase energy credits for that are generated with biomass. And then we have our SC 1383 compliance and reporting consultant and oversight by 10% of the engineer position is associated with this. Used to historically be a little bit more while we're making the transition out. That position is funded more through the general budget again. Development impact fees. The only expenses that you'll see budgeted in these are related to the CIP program that was already adopted. So we don't need to really talk about what those are tonight, but I've listed those funds here again. And then maintenance district funds. If a project, Railroad does a great job, and I'm sure Richard will as well. It's a big project. We're resurfacing a lot of streets, and part of that goes into the maintenance district. The maintenance district pays for that component of that. These maintenance district agreements, the town is responsible with collecting these assessments on these maintenance districts to maintain streets, curbs, sewage, sometimes streetlights if there's landscaping. And so those expenses, if there's a break fix, will hit the maintenance district funds. And sometimes utilities that we're watering in the landscape area in a maintenance district, they're paid that water bill. So that's what you see budgeted in the other funds. Slide, thank you. And this is my exciting slide. I should have put more color on it because that's my most exciting slide personally. Introducing Fund 600. So this is a new fund that was created basically as a reaction to all of the projects that are happening. I walked into this position and saw that there are a lot of projects and we have a lot of funding sources, and that's a great way to find revenue to create a project and deliver on. But it's an accounting nightmare and it's a tracking nightmare, and it's really difficult to see a project in its entirety when it's got 5 funding sources and you see part of it in this fund and part of it on this page. It's really hard to see and actually have ownership of what's happening and transparency of what this project costs. So we mitigated that by creating a new fund called Fund 600. And this basically combines all the appropriations from all the other sources that a project has. Those funds show an expense that they transfer in the portion that is from that fund. And then they combine in Fund 600, rather than having all of them use a file and projects listed, the funding sources match to the projects. So you can see what funding sources go to each project and the expenses to date. Now, we don't actually transfer the funds until the expenses happen, but they're budgeted for. So you'll see in 22-23 and in 23-24, transfer that money because the money is spent. And then in 24-25, the rest of it is budgeted to be a transfer if we spend. Okay, and then and the way that the report in the budget book shows, we have completed projects in construction, and projects in planning purposes, so that we track those projects construction or completion will fall off in future years, the active ones in the budget. And again, to reiterate, this does include the 25-26 CIP projects, just so that you can see the true fund balances that are not in the other funds. Okay, that was all the budget stuff. Now, quickly, the again, spending limitations, since there's an action for that as well. It's agenda item. The again, spending limitation basically is a rule from the 70s that limits our ability to appropriate tax revenues to a limit each year. And so that's our property taxes, and sales tax. And so we are required to calculate this annually. We take last year's limit, we apply some cost and population factors provided by the Department of Finance, can't fund it, and do the calculation, and then the tax adopted each year. And then we look at, are we close to that limit? And we are not at 50% of that limit. The whole calculation, all of those numbers are in the staff report. If you want to talk about it, we can, but our limit for this year is, for next year, is $10,862,862,000, $865. Action on that too. And with that, I will turn it back to council.
Thank you and great job.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I said,
Oh,
Well, it's amazing, God. You answered so many questions that I had. I've been, see, I probably had at least 13 years over that and everything. If we get problems like that, that would be wonderful. So I just had. There, now you can hear me. I thought it was copyrighted and. Okay. In 2000, on the maintenance districts, they say that we're responsible for 50 years. And so some of those are like in 34, that already. So what happens after years? Do we have to renew it, or does it go away? Or it just curious, like.
one of those, yes.
Do we have any way to renew it?
We've got 16 different reading districts. I don't know that they're all the same, but we have another place that we. If it does a bit down right line, then we'll be back to the voters. To decide. Are they all assessment districts?
They all have been, but I'm actually not up stated that.
This process to extend it for.
This notes that unfortunately we don't have one system. And then you answered the question about the one-time expenses if they are not, they will go back. So that comes. I noticed a lot of software updates in a lot of departments, which I think it's been a long time since we've had that. And I want to make sure that we're up to speed on that. So I appreciate that all of the different departments looked at that and did it. And then one other question, is there a typical amount for a reserve that we should go for, like like you need to have a 1 year expense? Like in a nonprofit, you have an amount you try to keep as a reserve.
Yeah, and I would definitely recommend that maybe sometime in the next 12 months that we discuss those reserves and we create a policy through the what our reserve, what we want the reserve to be. We probably want to look at some size towns, determine what appropriate fee for Loomis, but to establish that threshold, so it's not sitting stagnant at 1.1 million, it's moving with the change in its number. Think of that.
Really did a great job of in, that's it.
Yeah, so great presentation, the budget, the document itself, I mean, you apologized for it, but it wasn't a fun read, but it wasn't easy. Okay, a couple questions about what you mentioned. You talked about the change in the tax laws with Amazon. Is that an Amazon restructuring or is that a state law restructuring? What are you writing?
There's two things that occurred within a couple of years. There was change in the sales tax law and the corporate restructure that occurs. I can't tell you if one pushed the other, but they occurred at the same time, and so,
I thought it was a state law issue, but then the way you had said it was like Amazon played the game the right way. And
yes.
there's probably
It's-
Amazon said you will change the law so that I can change select. You mentioned the refuse franchise fee, and we're moving it into the solid waste fund because of the way it has some kind of.
Yeah.
Limits on the way the fees are collected.
Actually, it's a lot of money.
The franchise fee that you applied, there's some legislation that's in the works now that you actually will only be able to set those franchise fees based on what the expenditure that will happen. So us moving the funds automatically from solid waste actually give this action fee. Mostly spent there anyways. In there, but then now we're getting especially as we go forward the new franchise agreement. At some point, the current one we're looking at for a couple of years, long-term agreement. And then that would be data on backing would justify the franchise fee or just put the new license.
Is that, so we have a franchise fee for PG and a franchise fee for, do the same rules apply? Like we can only use PG and franchise to fund certain political related.
No,
it's the records.
It's just really the contract between on basis and solid waste seems to be the one.
So it's something that we negotiate in the contract for a certain, so, and it's just that, okay. The fund 600, is that an actual fund or is it just?
It will be. It will be.
Is that taking action, is that everybody on that agreement, or is that taking action for us?
No, actually, we didn't need to take action.
No, it's an accounting practice and on our backing of what we're doing. So we're not creating a fund source, new revenue or expenditure. Now it's just gathering everything to.
And then about your documents, so you have across the top, it says budget, and it says estimated actual, it says actual. And I was just wondering, is I was wondering this difference between the estimated actual and the actual actual?
Audits.
So
Yeah, and to point out a little bit about that specifically, 22, 23, we have the data in there, but there are a couple outstanding dates. We have, we haven't closed the year for the audit, and so we haven't allocated actual interest earnings. We are actually making some adjustments there. So that's the thing that's estimated at this point. But for the most part, 2023 is a pretty solid record there. And then 23, 24, we have to project. This was created this month. I had 2 months of activity that I.
So as some of the fees are really low. And I thought it was the fee study. Is that true? Is that budgeted?
You said fees are low, are you referring to fees for building permits and those various things? So like a master fee schedule, and full deal with that, we have not budgeted that in this here, how we an outside. Something we can probably look at the subsequent year, or as you can see, the margins pretty tight right this year.
And probably that we just talked about the fact that we wanted to do it, and we were going to.
My recollection, we did our piece and what's out and been fit for the inflation just of and the cost of doing business as process the data involved. But we needed to have study to justify instead of looking probably their figures to justify the figures that we need to work with the study to check up and down the
I thought, I wasn't sure if we had approved the study or not, but you're saying.
We have not given the fee studies.
There was a budget, so this is kind of another question, but there was a budget for traffic calming along Rutherford Canyon. I thought that was resident funded. Is that, were we actually putting in this the traffic calming, or is that?
Yeah, so that's actually a cap. Yeah, so we are pretty good. Yeah. We found that we are to be speed. We only get it back. Traffic calming is, we have literally straight on sun, the churn for the church, you let's take some right. So it's kind of a slush fund, small amount of money. Yeah, but it's the chapter.
Mentioned the economic development, increase in economic. I didn't notice that part of the book, but how you know how much? What was the increase? Stop me.
So, we created your budget. Last year, we budgeted for Chamber of Commerce and Business. And this year, or next year, it's 10,000. And then town promotion, we moved from 3,000 to.
That's not huge. It's an increase, but
Yeah.
I was. So. The planning department zoning updates, that's new. Is that- we'll update the zoning relative to what the general plan said. Okay, I'm not sure about that. The consultant for the open park and open space committee, I will, that seems like a lot of money for what I. Like I was thinking it's gonna be like a resident citizen committee where we get together and talk. But I would, $3,000 seems a lot for.
That's just a round number, you know, you put it in, if we, the capacity of staff. To do another committee or something like that, but support, we'll have to see what that looks like, define what, we still have development. Depending on how it's developed and what its purpose is, will dictate the soul. This is just a round number.
Okay, I will in the future have the option to. Vote on whether or not. To spend it.
Yes. The consultant contract.
And then. For code enforcement, is there a need for? This isn't the time. Is there enough? I know we don't have the money for it, but is there enough need for that?
I'm not sure right now. That's something we can look at. We're tracking that. We're expecting one of the tasks that we have for code enforcement is what we have is being monthly report for the status. Move that forward so we'll have a better understanding of that maybe by mid-year. But there needs to be some additional services.
I want to piggyback on that a little bit. What you're seeing budget for code enforcement is current bill rate monthly times 12. It's not an increase. That's, I don't know what happened early in the year, but that's what we're doing, being billed now. Well,
I'll say you're done and then I'll be on. Okay.
I'm kind of touch all of everything, so
I understand. Before I have a question for you. So I'm teaching my daughter, books and, and, so we're establishing the children. And I've heard you mention that there was some discrepancies in the children. Within students, might be, well, it's one thing, one fund, but another fund. So here's my next question. I know you're gonna give me something. Does it not make, would it make sense to correct that, not on the system that you're abandoning, but for that new system and account for that in the data transfer?
I would prefer to correct it beforehand so that that is not complicated in the transfer. If you can create what you want to the best of your ability in your existing system and then transfer that over, so you have less things that can go wrong during that transfer and validating the data. Our chart accounts is really just kind of messed up because the individual components don't have titles. They come together with the purpose and then having a title when the account is where really the structure should be this fund means this thing, this account means this thing. So getting those titles, the component part, and so that they're the same when we put those strings together is what we need to do. And we can do that in the system. Not the best.
If I may, Bill, I just want council to understand is if we get forward and select a new software from the console organization, there's usually a period of over a lot of time, it's 12 months. So that they make sure that you're missing something. So snagging, insisting that we lose a bunch of data. Lincoln's up there right now, they transitioned over to different software, but you run them in parallel. That way you make sure you're missing this. So you're aware, we'll have to for a while.
First, I just want to say thank you so much. I know that this was not easy. I know you put in a lot of really late night, early morning type hours into this. So, I know like in this case where we're seeing what a great, teacher or, be able to coach him through what he's been doing. Obviously to you, but when you're replacing somebody, you want to know like what their system is talking. And you didn't have that. So I was really going to say to you that this was extremely comprehensive and very transparent. So I appreciate all of that. My only question is, and it might be more to you, Wes, or maybe even Jenny, or no, I don't know, but on 23, we were just talking about the chamber and the amount of money that goes to the chamber. Can somebody explain to me? Yeah. So it's the chamber for different things that economic development committee. So then like the sign on the freeway to advertise the Eggplant Festival. It was always something that the town approved prior to them spending. So it wasn't a check handed to the chamber. Wasn't also an argument of what they spent, but had gone through Don or Rick, whoever else at the time. That's the only question I had. Everything else, I'm very good. Thank you.
Piggyback up to real quick. Okay. But in that regard, does that mean that, let's say that the chamber is going to consume this. If the chamber spends money and you don't want to reimburse it, we can say we don't want to. So that we can still have an option in the future to not spend.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a given, it's not a project in the chamber. So, and I wouldn't recommend the chamber spending.
I have a couple questions, I'm gonna piggyback on them, because maybe it's just, I'm really here. Chamber, but I know that they raise a lot. Of apologize, but anybody asked these questions, it's really. It's obviously, still a lot. Granted, we're not breaking zero, but they raise a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm just trying to, that's my first question, I just want to have, and that could be part of the chamber, or that is helping out. I know it's like a library, you find, do with the library. Go back and forth, but the chamber is separate unit, that person is, so maybe. I'm just,
No, I know, and that reason that bishop isn't for him. That's different, this is an economic development fund. And it's used for our town economic development. There was and it is in our general plan, to partner with the chamber to do economic development. So the only amount in the Chamber of Commerce that was increased to 10,000, that's all going to be improved, the economic development. But the dues, and then another that is the part to, that's probably to DSEC or something that has to do.
Yeah, and then the legacy loop and the software we have, the texting and we.
That comes out of the chamber.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not out.
So, okay, so that's gonna be kind of the next question, so basically I'm confirming, that I know there's been a lot of questions about citizens. I'm curious as well. You're saying that that's separate. So I'm just confirming this economic development thing. I don't want to sound ignorant, but I kind of share in what a lot of the town feels it's like their workers say I'm just asking because we're talking about money. We don't really know who's on that committee. Maybe my students, for instance, and I'm in my marketing title. Say this, we're trying to say we're talking about a sign of Dear Paul and Taylor that we put in like the items. So I'm just asking these questions because it is some concern for this. I'm like, well, running why would we putting it in sports account for the town promotion as well as the next question, $7,000 promotion. What is that free for any? For instance, I'd like to say that there are people, a lot of people who come from support back. Who like how the stuff is right now. So I'm just asking the chamber that it's not motion based. I'm excited that you've done our function to run for one. I didn't play right here. I know that we voted on that commission, but obviously now promotion exactly.
I'm gonna just asking a quick question here. With things like the banners we just put up to promote our concert series, our swim program and stuff like that. Those are all considered town development and in town visibility. And these are the types of things that come into it. And while in the big budget, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but the latest round of banners were about 1,500 for, so this is where some of those costs come in, Stephanie. Yeah.
I'm just asking, no, that's a separate one. That's in the CIP. But
So, but you're saying that, like, you know, really the cheapest, that. I'm gonna try.
I want to remind you that the budget is just, we're predicting what it is, but everything that you're talking about is something that would have to come back to us, decide before we spend it. Correct? So it's not that we're, right now, it's like, say, it's possible, but exactly. So,
David, to be clear, my signatory authority is up to 50,000. So if the expenditure is under them, I would be the one proving. But if it is council's direction, then we can agree to the line on it and say, oh, they bill would say what they were spending on, we can bring that discussion forward.
but that you were talking about, I would definitely like to at least see that before the top motion. The chamber.
Can you give us a breakdown on what, you know, yeah, we don't have a system, but can you give us a breakdown of the council, what's been on the chamber? Yeah.
I can provide that. I would say that there is a page over the years with some conference bill that we pay the chamber directly as a reimbursement. And sometimes we would be managing in something in relation to the about house related to a chamber activity that Carol was actually calling and paying some of this be related to the same purpose. So every so, but the intended purpose is economic development, getting people into town, people to the restaurants and stores in town. So I could definitely give a breakdown of the business. And just want to trigger, there was a reason the money was given that was spent on economic development. It was a check given to the chamber. And I know this because I was an executive for 12 years. It was different. Sometimes Roger would pay it, and sometimes get out the chamber pays. Yes, and I can definitely confirm that. Everything is a reimbursement, an invoice receipt or something if it to the chamber. And if it's related to a chamber that needs to pay out to those numbers, but never a check handed in advance.
I just want to be clear though, I'm not begrudging, I'm just sort of trying to get clarity. But I do have one question, under the same page 23. The CARES business assistant grants. The actual was $87,500. Got a grant from like a federal grant or something, or what was it? It was class, okay. Okay. No, I just was curious about the chamber. I totally understand what you're saying. I'm not trying to make anybody defensive. I just really, this is my first budget meeting.
And I actually address, but I don't know if addressing about AIDS, so you're fine. I figured I need to ask this. You know, now they're out of this stupid guy. So we're gonna you guys go back to the public. So sorry. Hi, everybody. Janet Parker, 55 years away. So they scanned the budget. That's really part of the way of meeting. Very clear. I just wanted to say that overall, the budget's really tight. Kind of 30,000. So I was further thinking efforts and every line and really it's almost with a zero. $3,000 these days, not this much money. In terms of the fee structure was talked about when I was so that should be something that's definitely
So, I would. Anyway, I have more things on, but I was also talking about that before, but you can, anyway, just, consider, thank you.
I think that, Nexus was supposed to happen in the project, and it didn't happen.
Anybody else in the, before we go to vote? Okay, Gail?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Miguel. Go ahead and unmute Miguel.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, Miguel.
Okay, first thing, other than Carol, who I can hear very clearly, and the people that were outside the meeting that came in on, like I am, I could hear them. But the rest of the console, it's all broken up. Town manager, not quite as bad. So maybe you guys can allocate some money or something to something with your microphones or something, but it's really broken up real bad. One thing I'd like you to consider, we started the town concerts about 16 years ago, and the funding for it has been the same every year, hasn't gone up or down. But the quality of the performers has changed drastically. Several years ago, we would have groups of 8 or 10 musicians, a couple singers, and it was very well done. Lately, we've had 4 or 5 performers, basically 3 guitars, a drummer, and somebody that thought they could sing. So I'd like the council to allocate an additional $10,000 so we can go back to the quality of the concerts that we had before. Thank you.
I think that we don't have enough in ours, I was in the elements there and make an adjustment for that, Maybe we can look at it again. After we, in my opinion.
No, I was gonna say that, right, respond to that, please. These comments, but clearly, and well, we can have a conversation, but. Or at least I know when we met. With Wes, we realized that it's a very. Very tight this year, but hopefully upcoming year, once we start getting revenue. Cost forms, we see what that looks like next year, then that might be a different story, but. I feel like we'll be tapping some breaks. Yeah, I also had that sleep.
And have some send thought process on it.
So. And then to back the council's here, deliberate.
We were talking about the fee study. Did we say we were gonna, we decided that, we say we're gonna bring that back to the 16th? Is that what we can think about?
Staff are making us bring it back in 6 months and the date. One month. There's a lot of one-time costs that we have for specific years, but we
but I'm treating it. Is it basically says the steps which we did and then necessary to adopt the 2004 to 2024 to 2025 budget. So again, at that time, we want, there's no. Let's, anybody want to question, I'm going to. The budget for fiscal year 2024 changing.
Just, we also need to add to that, if we just say, because we don't have the game appropriations. Which is a separate thing, so we just, we recommend action. You can do them in single motion, just move the recommended action, or you can do the. Well, adding the appropriation.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cortez,
Aye.
Councilmember Cartwright, Councilmember Ring,
Yes.
Councilmember Nicely,
Yes.
Mayor Youngblood.
So, you know, it's not on. I checked. These are discussed or.
We don't have an agenda. item.
I'm just gonna say that. So I'll just adjourn and have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you for coming.